Guys, if you have type 1 bipolar, I don't know how you stumbled across this video. I would have given anything to have this video 9 years ago when I was first diagnosed. I would have given anything. I'm gonna take you through the Jedi's manual for managing type 1 bipolar. I'm basically gonna unload all of the knowledge that I've accumulated over the last 9 years, managing my illness, recovering from my illness, using metabolic therapies in this one video. I wrote out all my notes here, you know, my credentials. I mean, I was hospitalized 4 times for manic psychotic episodes, each for 2 weeks. I took dozens of meds. I saw dozens of mental health professionals. I was sick. I couldn't get well. I couldn't prevent these manic episodes from happening. Do not miss this section on achieving stability, which I'm going to talk about the ketogenic diet specifically and how to use the ketogenic diet to manage bipolar disorder, type 1. So that's a little bit later in the video. Do not miss that, so stick around for that. A little bit of a disclaimer, my own permutation of type 1 bipolar is the hardcore manic episodes. So I struggle with depression. It was moderate. It wasn't as severe as some of the type 2s get. You know, they get the really gnarly depression, but my thing was manic episodes, psychosis. I could not stop myself from going manic. So if you have that issue, if you have type 1 bipolar, you struggle with hypomania, you struggle with mania, this video is going to be especially helpful. And you guys, it's going to take a couple character attributes to execute this program properly. Discipline, number 1, because you're going to have to stick to a schedule, a routine, a diet, etc. You're not going to be able to cheat. Number 2, self-awareness. So you have to monitor your mood, watch when those hypomanic episodes come, catch them as they're coming, and then take the appropriate action to mitigate the hypomania, return back to stability. And alienation, because you're gonna have to live differently from your peers. Your peers get to drink, they get to smoke weed. You have a metabolic brain disorder, you have type 1 bipolar, you might not be able to do that. And that's just life. I've had to give all that stuff up, but my life is so much better because of it, you guys. On the other end of this, I can promise you stability, fulfilling life, a stable mood. If you have type 1 bipolar, you have a diagnosis, you're on a bunch of meds. If you follow these steps and the principles that I'm going to outline for you, I can promise there's a good chance, okay, there's a good chance that you can recover completely, go into complete remission from your illness and taper down your meds a lot, if not completely. Okay, there's a good chance. I don't want to guarantee that because everyone's different, but the keto diet and these strategies seem to work especially well for people who have type 1 bipolar. Okay, let's get into the program. So phase 1, I'm going to call preventing hypomania. And these are all of the steps that I have taken over the years to prevent a hypomanic episode from coming on. You guys, the reason this is so important is that if you can prevent that hypomania from coming on in the first place, you can prevent the manic episode. And for a lot of people who have type 1 bipolar, it's that manic episode that comes on, sends people into a spiral, and then they get the depression, they crash. That's where all the problems come. So if you can prevent that hypomania, prevent yourself from going full-blown manic, it's going to be very good. Okay, so here are the things you need to do to prevent a hypomanic episode from coming on. Number 1, ketogenic diet. Yes, you guys, it is critical. I cannot even articulate the impact a ketogenic diet had on my mood. It eliminated my bipolar symptoms, my type 1, my manic episode. So if you're not doing keto, you have to get on keto. I'll talk a lot about that later, a lot more about doing keto for type 1 bipolar. The TLDR is if you're already doing a keto diet, good. If you're not, ease into the keto diet over 12 to 16 weeks, preferably with a dietitian who's working with your psychiatrist, and you can all come up with a game plan. Second way to prevent a manic episode, consistent sleep schedule. So I found over the years that staying up late can be very disruptive, can trigger hypomania, can trigger mood elevation. So if possible, pick a sleep schedule, pick a bedtime that's not too late, and stick to that every night. Third step, avoid drugs. You guys, avoid drugs, alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine, I would suggest. So I actually drank caffeine for the first few years of keto. I did fine. I eliminated caffeine recently. I found so much benefit. I feel so much more stable. Anything that's triggering, anything that's elevating, so all of the things I just listed, you want to avoid that because you want to just let your system relax, facilitate as much stability as possible, and that's going to be good. So no drugs, no alcohol. So especially marijuana, cocaine, don't do that. No drugs, no alcohol, no nicotine, and no caffeine. Meds, yeah, so mood stabilizers, guys, antipsychotics, benzos, those can all be great anti-manic tools. The one thing I will say though, if you're going to take those Long term, be aware that those medications might have side effects, metabolic side effects and otherwise. You might become dependent and you might have withdrawal if you try to taper off them. So if you take these meds for a long time and then you try to taper off them, you might have serious, horrific withdrawal, sometimes for months or years. So just if you want to take psychiatric medications long term, keep that in mind, especially benzos. Withdrawals can be debilitating. I came off benzos, I came off Ativan, so I know what that's like. I would avoid that if I were you. Stress management. Yes, manage your stress. Okay, too much stress, too much stuff going on is going to be stimulating, make you go hypomanic potentially. So meditate, take time, stillness, monitor stress. That's all great. The last thing I'll say, blue light blockers in the evening. So those are so amazing. I found that even some of the bright light in the evening, being in casinos and watching even TV can be stimulating and trigger my mood a little bit. So I would get some blue light blockers and you can just wear them from like 8 p.m. forward, and those will help mitigate any potential mood elevations coming in the evening. Okay, so let's refresh, guys. I'm just gonna look at my notes. So ways to prevent hypomania from coming on in the first place: ketogenic diet, number 1, regular sleep schedule, avoid drugs, so marijuana, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, cocaine, anything like that. Avoid anything stimulating. Especially marijuana made me go like psychotic every time I used to smoke it. So I would avoid that. Take meds, so mood stabilizers, like if you need them over the short term, just to help you stay some baseline, especially as you're transitioning into a ketogenic diet, having some buffer and coverage from the meds can be helpful. And stress management and blue light blockers in the evening, guys. So those are all amazing ways that you can prevent a hypomanic episode from coming on in the first place. Okay, moving on to phase 2 of the type 1 bipolar program, which is catching hypomanic episodes. So if you happen to have a little bit of mood elevation come on, catching a hypomanic episode is so critical. You basically have to catch the hypomania before you lose insight into your condition. What I mean by that is, once you're so manic that you are just in the flow of mania and you don't realize you're manic, it becomes impossible to take action, right? So there's that point at which you lose insight with the illness. The hypomania turns into a mania, becomes so severe, like in my own case, turns into a psychosis where I'm not able to understand what's going on. So at all costs, catch the hypomanic episode before you lose insight. And these are some of the ways you can do that. Here's what you're gonna do, guys. You're gonna mark down all your manic habits. So I have a list here of possible manic habits. Look at your historic manic symptoms, what you've had in the past, but some possible ones would be less sleep, increased activity, new ideas, like you wanna travel, stuff like that, impulsive decision making, anything spiritual, so spiritual awakening, stuff like that seems to be a common trend with the type 1 bipolars. I've noticed excessive gambling, drugs, alcohol use, promiscuous sexual behavior. These are all symptoms of manic episodes. So if you want to be really hardcore about this and you want to just at all costs prevent a manic episode or hypomanic episode, or at least catch one when it comes on, what I would encourage you to do is write down all your symptoms of potential mania. Track each one at the end of each day. Did you engage in that activity? So at the end of the day, you're gonna say, hey, did I spend a lot of money? No. Did I do a bunch more activities than usual? Maybe a 1 to 5. You could say, I did a couple activities. I'm gonna say a 2. And then you would do that with all your manic habits. So if you wanna be really hardcore, you can mark all of those at the end of each day, right? And then take a tally and just say, okay, did I engage in any of these behaviors that are typical of my manic self? And then do a self-assessment and say, okay, my mood seems fine today. I didn't do any of this. If you don't want to do all of that, I understand that's a lot. At the very least, at the end of each day, from 1 to 5, mark down how manic did I feel today? And just, go over the day, kind of think about it and give it a 1 to 5, 5 being super manic, 1 being no mania at all. And do the same for depression that day. What this is going to get you in a habit of doing is a self-assessment. So I mentioned in the beginning, I think that self-awareness is such a critical component of this program. Recognizing when you have going into a hypomanic episode, becoming familiar with that feeling of having the energy come on, of having the pace of the brain and the pace of your thinking start to ramp up. Becoming familiar with what that feels like is going to be so critical. And over many, many years, you guys, when I was still having my manias, before I found keto, before I found metabolic therapies, I tracked my mood, I tracked my mania, I tracked my elevation every day. And I started to understand what it's like to go into a manic episode, what it feels like, how seductive that mania is when it comes, because I would have energy and I would want to take on activities and I was productive. So track this. And as you start to track this, you'll notice if you start to behave weirdly, because it'll be right there in your logs. Okay. Second thing, catching a manic episode, track sleep. You have to track sleep. This is so important. So what you're going to do every night, you're going to mark down when you fell asleep and when you woke up, calculate the hours of sleep, and you're going to have that in your log. So you're going to have mania and depression score from the night before and total hours slept. Now, you're going to look at how much you sleep successive nights, right? So what you really want to watch out for in your log, and I'll post one of my logs just like up on the side here so you guys can pause and see how I did this back in the day. Watch out for those cases where you sleep 8 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, like night over night, right? And your sleep just decreases every night. When you notice your sleep decreasing night over night, that's a sign that you might be heading into some mood elevation. Also, waking up earlier and earlier night over night can be a sign. So your log is going to be critical here, where you'll be able to compare your manic scores and your scores on those manic behaviors from the night before with the patterns in your sleep and start to make conclusions about the stability of your mood and whether you're going into a manic episode. So non-negotiables, until you get the hang of it, until you get a feel for it. I did this for many years myself, you guys, every day. Track mania, track depression, track sleep. Watch out for seasons. So seasons are very tricky. The equinox is tricky. In late March in the Northern Hemisphere, late September in the Southern Hemisphere is the spring equinox. In the spring equinox, the days are becoming longer and longer rapidly, right? So not only are the days becoming longer, towards the end of March, they're becoming longer very quickly. That's a second derivative joke if you like calculus. But when it's late March, this is when most people with type 1 bipolar are most vulnerable. Watch your mood in late March, you guys. You have to watch your mood in late March. And even I would say late March as a month through April, May, and June can all be sketchy months for a lot of people because like the sun is coming out, summer's coming, and it can trigger mood elevation in so many people. And my old psychiatrist used to schedule his inpatient psychiatric hours for March because like just all his bipolar patients would go manic in March. So those are the highest risk months. Also, September, even the fall equinox, when the days are becoming shorter, can be risky for some people. The lengths of the days are still changing, even though in the other direction. A couple other triggers for hypomania. Time changes can be tricky. I think especially like west to east. So time changes, it might be worth having a little extra antipsychotic medication on you. And romance, like falling in love and those endorphins can also trigger some hypomania, I've noticed. So like many different things can have an impact. Just watch out for that stuff. Part 3, calming a hypomanic episode. So what do you do when you've noticed, okay, I feel a little bit ramped up right now. I've been gambling, I've been acting out sexually, have all these new ideas, a lot of energy, and I've slept 5 hours for 3 nights in a row. What do I do now that I've noticed, okay, I think something's up? I'm gonna give you some steps you can take that will hopefully quell this. And in order of importance, right? Number 1, medication, okay? Keep as needed antipsychotic medication or maybe a benzo, that might work, right? I wouldn't recommend taking that long term, but have this on your person at all times, you guys. At all times, wherever you go, no matter what, you have to have an antipsychotic or some medication in case something happens. That way, once you catch this, right, you start to realize something's happening, you can pop that immediately. You can pop that antipsychotic, right? Whatever that is for you. For me, it's olanzapine. I keep 2.5 milligram tablets of olanzapine in my keychain with me when I drive, wherever I go, so that if I know that if I ever catch myself acting a little weirdly, or I think something's up with my mood, I can pop one of those, maybe 2 of those, olanzapine. There's no question that that's going to bring me down and bring me back to baseline. Medication, you guys, can be amazing. Like it can be so amazing if used in that way. I thank God every day that I have olanzapine to prevent me from, or to quell those hypomanic episodes if I ever, find them coming on. A couple other things you can do if you find a hypomania coming on, I would get in darkness. So get in a dark room from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. That's going to be so helpful. And get, blue light blockers, sleep mask, darkness, right? Deep breaths, calming music, just relax, do nothing, don't do a bunch of activities. All of that will help you settle down. And when I've had subtle hypomanic episodes, even just getting darkness and quiet and stillness has helped me come back to normal, just taking deep breaths. So all of those are good tools, but I would say medication is still your number one tool if you find yourself just getting a little amped up. Okay, next section, you guys, achieving stability. I want to talk about ketogenic diet, why it works so well, why it can work especially well for people with type 1 bipolar. So for those of you who don't know, ketogenic diet is a low carb, ultra low carb diet. You basically eat a bunch of fat, you eat moderate protein. I have a lot of other videos about it. Your brain will start to burn ketones, which are a different fuel source from glucose. Glucose is the energy that comes from carbohydrates. Your brain will burn ketones as fuel. Switching that fuel source for your brain is how all of this healing happens. So I think I've noticed for people with type 1 bipolar, or for people who are prone to those high highs, it's just an energy imbalance is the problem, right? And they can oftentimes do incredibly well on a ketogenic diet, and after just 6 to 12 months see huge improvements. And for me, guys, when I went on a keto diet in 2021, healed up, right? No more manic episodes, or at least far, far better. Okay, so like I said before, if you're not on a ketogenic diet yet, when you transition into it, there can be a little bit of mood stuff. So you can actually have little blips of hypomania or depression, I guess, as you're transitioning into the ketogenic diet right before you become adapted to it. So for that reason, you guys, if you're not on a keto diet already, I would recommend transitioning into one over 12 to 16 weeks. So slowly drop the carbs week over week until you're in a full ketogenic diet. And during that period when you're acclimating to the diet, pay especially careful attention to your mood. Keep the meds where they are, have extra medication on hand in case you need it. Monitor your sleep, monitor your manic behaviors like I talked about before during those first 12 to 16 weeks. Second thing, track ketones regularly, guys. I think 1.5 or 2 to 3.5 is a good range. Everyone's different, but if you can get the ketones up to 2 millimoles, that's great. 2.5, that's great consistently. You can get a blood pricker and you can just prick your finger and take your ketones and you'll be able to see them that way. Do not cheat. Do not cheat, because I have known people to have type 1, cheat, eat a bunch of sugary food, and then they go psychotic and they end up in the hospital. So during that first 9 to 12 months, do not cheat. Be ultra strict. You have to think of this as a medication that you have to take every day, your ketogenic diet. Once you're through those first 9 to 12 months, you can't, and you're doing really well, or whenever you're starting to do well, you can experiment with taking the carbs up a tiny bit, tiny bit at a time, just see what happens, watch your log, all that good stuff. But for 9 to 12 months, I would say for most people, you have to be ultra strict about this diet. Consider fewer meals, you guys. I've been experimenting with eating twice a day and it's been amazing. And then watch protein, because too much protein for some people can kick them out of ketosis. I know that's the case for myself. So I just try not to eat too much protein, moderate protein, tons of fat, butter wafers, heavy cream, olive oil, coconut oil, all that. That's great. And the last section is tapering off medication, which can be done once you're stable. So just a couple quick points here. Taper slowly. Don't taper all at once, you guys. These meds can cause withdrawal effects, as I've learned over the years. So taper slowly, right? Taper very, very slowly. Taper more slowly towards the end. So going from 10 milligrams of a medication to 9 milligrams is much easier than going from 1 milligram to 0 milligrams, even though it's a drop of 1 milligram in both cases. So taper more slowly towards the end. This is called tapering by percentage. I have an entire video about tapering medications if you want to learn more about that. And taper one medication at a time, probably, unless you are doing something else with your psychiatrist. I mean, everyone's different. So listen, your psychiatrist. Also, physical exercise, you guys. Physical cardiovascular exercise. Amazing tool for bumping ketones, right? So elliptical, swimming, running, rowing machine, all of that, phenomenal. You got to do physical exercise every day to bump those ketones up. And as an addendum, you guys, I didn't struggle with heavy depressions. I had depressions, but a couple tips for managing depression: physical exercise, incredibly important. Sunlight first thing in the morning also is going to be really helpful just to set your circadian rhythm. Invest in relationships, have meaning in your life, right? Get off, TikTok, X, all that stuff. Connect with real people. That's all going to be incredible. But I would say for depression, the major levers to pull would be exercise, physical exercise, sunlight, lots of time in the sun, especially first thing in the morning. Get your eyes exposed to that sunlight, and ketogenic diet, right? Keto can be incredible for depression as well. So I would pull those levers before anything else. That's everything I know about managing type 1 bipolar, or everything I can think of that I know. So subscribe, drop a like, drop a comment. You guys, we need to get this message out. Like, everyone needs to understand that there are ways to live with these illnesses and recover from these illnesses without medication. Simple lifestyle tips: keto diet, sleep, exercise, all this good stuff, drug, alcohol abstinence. So please subscribe, guys, so we can get this message out. That was a long video to shoot. Gotta go edit now. I will check you all later.